Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. We're now going to be talking with Brother Malik Arafat. He's written a beautiful piece entitled Faith, Justice and Belonging, a South African Muslim Reflection. It starts out saying in every community, shared identity creates a sense of solidarity. For Muslims, this bond is rooted in faith, values, and a sense of global brotherhood and sisterhood. It is something meaningful and worth preserving. Brother Malik Arafat, Assalamu alaikum to you. Welcome to the program. Lovely to have you on your show. And I thoroughly enjoyed reading the article and wondering, does this come hot on the heels of what we're seeing unfolding currently in South Africa regarding March and March and other such groups rising up and obviously chanting anti-immigrant slogans to the point where it could end up in xenophobic attacks? Welcome.
Bismillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and the viewers. MashaAllah, some of us have been very active on the ground for the longest of time. Our voices are, heard selectively for various reasons. But these matters that are happening now. For some of us have been warning for the longest of time that, the Muslim community has to wake up and realize that as a minority in the country, the challenges that we're facing are huge. And it's important that we should self-respect, introspect, and self-reflect, so that we are ready in the eventuality things happen. But as you know, that things are not as you wish them to be, because life goes on, and for some people, opportunities when they come, they use them for their benefit to the fullest, regardless of whether they are ethical, moral, or whatever. And so in this instance, the March and March really has heightened what has already been there. It is not a once-off event, as you all know. And, we've been, because of our involvement in these matters, we needed to find a balanced way of expressing these things. Let me start off by saying South Africa has two distinct groups of people or communities, if you want. You have the majority, who are the displaced people of the land. They are the original landowners. And then you've got the migrant community, which really includes Europeans, Asians, other Africans, etc. And the conflicts that are happening today are really about that. But the voice that is not heard is the voice of the displaced, the majority. It is taken for granted that the democratic government of this country represents the displaced, but it is not true. We know that the government is there, supported by certain powerful interests who are using the government to perpetuate what has already been there. The challenges of pre-1994 that we had are now are still there, and now are being exploited in a different way. The arrival of this new wave of immigrants into the country mimics what was done historically soon after the arrival of Jan van Riebeeck in 1652, when he imported slave labor from Malaysia, Borneo, Java, Sumatra, West Africa, Madagascar, and all those places to come and replace the locals in Cape Town. And they've been using the same system over and over again. And that system has also benefited them, because the new arrivals always become a buffer between themselves and the indigenous displaced people. So that, each time the displaced people make an effort to get back their lands, they end up in conflict with the new arrivals, because the new arrivals are the immediately seen, faces of the work that has been done behind closed doors.
Beautifully explained. Beautifully explained, Brother Malik. you in fact just preempted my next question by talking about the imported labor force from all around in the time of Jan van Riebeck, and the migrants were the buffer. And that exactly is what is playing out right now, is it not? So our anger is misdirected at migrants rather than corrupt politicians and the other third force that are trying to destabilize the country. That is what it is about. That is what it's all about, is it not? So that's the one part of my comment slash question. And then let me also put this to you in the paper that you've written, and I quote, South Africa is not Dar al-Islam, land of Islam, governed by Sharia, which is Islamic law, but a racially diverse and multi-faith constitutional democracy governed by the rule of law. Residents and migrants alike are obliged to observe these laws. It's also a country where Muslims, though a small minority, roughly 2%, are generally able to live safely, practice their religion freely, and enjoy rights protected by the Constitution. This is not something taken for granted. And the active word here is Constitution. We often hide behind that word, despite the atrocities that are played out against innocent people. So 3 different parts to this question. Please respond.
Yeah, well, I'll try my best. The Constitution of South Africa is a construct that was imposed on our people. Even though people accepted it and following it, etc. 30 years have shown that people are now beginning to say there's a need to redo the Constitution and all those things, and then some groups are actively involved in make sure that happens. So yes, it is important to observe rule of law, but because of the nature of the Constitution, that anybody can interpret it as they wish, and depending on how powerful you are in terms of influence and money and things like that, you can always use the courts to reinterpret the Constitution. So in many ways, when you talk about the Constitution, you're actually standing on quicksand, and you can sink with it. So, but on the matter of the apparent conflict, as everybody's talking about, that indigenous Africans are throwing out or expelling Africans and that type of thing. The language used in this differs. There are the people who are actively involved in protecting, or saying that they're protecting these illegal migrants, most of the time are themselves involved in exploiting them as slave labor and things like that. And you'll agree that slave labor is a crime. And and also you'll have to agree that coming into the country illegally and staying in the country illegally, even when you enter with a valid passport, we don't have visa or work visa or things like that. That all of that is a crime. And so we are in a situation where, depending on what platform you're using and who is behind you, there's a competition between voices that are saying illegality is not an issue. Some people are using Islam and saying that this world is for us to enjoy, as Allah has given us all the land. And they, don't accept, they don't mention that, in fact, when we have Dar al-Islam, that Islam has borders. If you're, and there's a clear demarcation as to where Dar al-Islam starts, where Dar al-Islam ends. And today, if you want to go for Hajj, you need a passport. We can't go to Makkah and Medina of Saudi Arabia without a valid passport and visa and all those things. So it is disingenuous for people to then want to create an impression that South Africa should relax its immigration laws as if it is Dalai Islam where anybody can just walk in and do as they wish. It is not the case. We know, for instance, for a fact that there's crime and all sorts of illegal things that have been done in the country by faces that we cannot point, because people can literally come into the country in the morning, commit a crime, and they're back in their countries in the evening. And so a lot of us have experienced that. I mean, I've had an experience where my furniture and my house was raided, and furniture and everything that was in the house was taken, and reported the case to the police. And as a journalist, I followed the matter and discovered that this is a Mozambican syndicate that was involved, where my goods, by the time I reported the matter, my goods had already been in Mozambique. So there are people who are experiencing challenges. I mean, in my own family, I can show you people that are in drugs, and and that's huge pain that is going through, that our people are going through. So these are pressures that force people to stand up and ask the government. And at this point in time, what people are doing is saying to the government, if you do not enact the law, we will take the law into our hands. And it is in itself a conundrum, because the government has forced people to actually force them to do the work. And you can see now that now that has happened, there is a response. The government departments are beginning to work. They're beginning to raid, places that need to be raided, and all of those things are happening. If you compare what is happening now and like a few months earlier, you can actually see the difference. And so yes, there is fear, and the fear is legitimate. People have to be fearful of their lives, fearful of their livelihood and all those things. But sometimes, things are such that people are forced, because of circumstances. And the displaced people of this land don't have a voice, and unfortunately, this is why there is so much difficulties, because they are never given a voice.
And sadly, it seems as if government will only sit up and listen when there's violence or threats of violence and huge protest action, which disrupts people's lives and the entire economy of the country. It seems it's only then when government sits up and realize we have a problem and we need to address it. But how they address it is another matter altogether. Your article seems to be targeted at mainly the Muslim community of South Africa, and we number possibly 2% of the entire population. So we also know that what is played out currently has sparked division within the Muslim community itself. Some people argue that Muslims should support one another as a matter of principle, emphasizing unity and protection. Others maintain faith does not place anyone above the law, and that accountability is essential, especially in a country that affords Muslims dignity, safety, and freedom. That's I'm obviously quoting you from this article you've written. So I'd like you to respond to that paragraph, but also bearing in mind that we have a very giving Muslim community. Our pockets are very, very deep. Whenever disaster strikes, you'd find a Muslim aid agency at the forefront trying to assist the desperate and those that are affected, regardless of color, creed, or nationality, or even religion. So let's talk about this paragraph in your article in context with the giving nature of the Muslim community in South Africa. And ought we be doing things differently? Is it enough what we're doing? What is our position? What is our role? How should we make ourselves more visible to show the rest of South Africa that we are playing our part, not only in the current situation, but we have been playing our part long and hard?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that in a simple way. Charity begins at home. You know, it is in the house, what we do in the house, that people see. People emulate your actions more than your words, more than your pronouncements. Um, we are aware that Muslims are very generous, and it's something that should not change at all. In fact, they should continue doing that. But at the same time, we are aware that the people who work in Muslim households or in their shops and things like that are always complaining about how they are being exploited and all of those things. And so this is where the imbalance comes in. That things that you do on the outside are not a reflection of what you are in the inside. And that is a huge bearing. People may not necessarily see it. Some people, think that if you it's business as usual to exploit the other person. It is not. And so the barakah, we lose the barakah of the good work that we are doing because of the things that we do in private. And this is where the Muslim community is missing the point. If each one of us would have the courage to say to our brother, to our sister, to our mother, to our father, that please do not exploit people, pay them properly, talk to them properly, don't mistreat them, and things like those, it will go a long way in creating, in creating balance in our society. But at the same time, the barakah, and that's the hidden thing, the barakah of the hand that gives is such that the hand, the other hand should not know what the hand is giving. That hand is giving. And when you in the townships, in common language in the townships, when we introduce ourselves as Muslims, the first thing people ask is, these people are exploiting us. You don't hear the opposite. You don't hear people saying, these people are helping us.
Okay, and I've got to interrupt you there. I'm so sorry. We've run out of time, but very quickly, a very short answer, if you don't mind. How do we switch things around so that people see Muslims as being generous and being at the forefront in assisting when and where needed? What needs to happen? What is that switch that we should be turning on to really show a true picture of who we are?
We should stop being the other or treating people as the other.
Okay.
People have been in this country for the longest of time. They don't even know Sesotho, this is Zulu. They don't even interact with our people. I've been a Muslim since 1978. I can tell you it's only 5 Indian Muslims that have come to my house to eat with me. They always, it is always the other way around. They never just want to come and sit and eat with me.
Yeah, lots of work to be done. Thank you for that perspective. Hope to have many more deeper conversations with you. And I suppose it's time that we woke up and realized how the world or other South Africans see us as Muslims. Thank you for that perspective. Till the next time, as always, Allah accept from you. Keep up the du'as, and Assalamu alaikum to you.